Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's episode of That's So Unprofessional with me, Dr. Lee. I have the amazing Traci Hall with me today. She's a client and a friend and is really out there in the world doing some incredible work as a reinvention and trauma coach, which I can't wait to talk more about, like, what that means.
Yeah.
And I do want to just put a content warning. Y'all know every episode has like a content warning on it because we're talking about trauma, we're talking about leadership, like we're going all the places that people don't normally go, right? And this one specifically, we're going to be talking about uh attempts at suicide, completed suicide potentially, um some of the things that the very real daily, like, long-term things that go into intentionally staying on the planet, as I like to say. So just invitation to be, gentle, tender with yourself, like take a break, do what you need to do. And I'm excited to have this conversation because, like, most people don't talk about this.
Right. Mhm.
So Traci, like, can you just start off by telling everybody a little bit about you? Like, we want to hear your story.
Sure. So I am currently in the Midwest, born and raised in Kansas. I am 34 years old, and just in 2022, I was diagnosed with autism. And kind of all my life, I felt that I was different, and it got to a point where it's just like, okay, I really need a diagnosis of something. It's more than PTSD. It's more than this. There's something more to this because connections are hard. Things just seem more difficult than they are for normal people. And lo and behold, I get this autism diagnosis, and a lot of people don't talk about what happens after the fact.
Mm,
Some people are really just like, oh, things make sense now. Oh my gosh, I have this epiphany. And for me, it was just this, like, shutdown. I
mm,
felt really sad, grieving. And I remember saying to one of my coworkers, I'm like, is it better to be the shy, weird girl or the autistic girl? Because, like, there's such a stigma around autism as well and what people think it looks like. So there was a lot of grappling with that. And then, like, I'll just circle back to my year of 2022 because that was kind of the year that things just went to hell in a handbasket and kind of build me up to where I am now. I was dealing in the middle of a defamation case, a federal defamation case from
mm,
my assaulter, and having to defend that, having old wounds open there. I graduated with my master's degree, and then about a week or so later, while I'm vacationing and celebrating in California, my boyfriend of 10 years breaks up with me via a very mean text. So there's that. And then uh, a friend of mine who was my best friend, and she just meant the world to me. I was feeling replaced by somebody else that had come into her life. So I decided to make the difficult decision to have some space. That was really devastating. Then my friend's mom, who they live in Colorado, she passed from COVID. So I took a trip out to Colorado to be with her unexpectedly. Things at work were going to hell in a handbasket because we had a cyber incident. So my routine there was disrupted of, like, that was my safe space. I knew what things were happening there. That was all washed away. And so it was just like kept snowballing to where I could not keep up and process through what one thing happened.
mm.
And so it just kept piling on, piling on, piling on. Then I caught COVID, and it was horrible.
Oh
Like,
my
it was like, felt like I was gonna die. And it was just like one thing after the other until December, when I decided to text this friend that I had decided to have the distance from happy birthday. She said thank you. Like, I didn't expect a response, but she said thank you. And there wasn't, like, an invitation to continue the
God.
conversation or anything. And that just broke me. And so, yep, a couple days later, I was like, I I need help. I need something more because, like, I'm ready to go. I've got a plan. I'm ready to just end it. I can't take it. People will be better off without me. Like, I'm just done. And so I spent some time in the hospital, came out of that in 2023. I consider that kind of a lost year for me,
Yeah.
but it was also a big year because it was just rebuilding everything, finding out who I am, who do I want to be, how do I want to take this these horrible things that happened to me and really just help other people get through that, and to show them that, it's possible to come out on the other side. Like, it really freaking sucks, but you can come out on the other side, and you can take it and draw strength from it, and just, yeah, basically reinvent yourself and learn more about yourself, So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Like, I think I'm a boring person, but when I say all this shit, like, it's like,
I
wow,
mean,
okay.
I mean, like, I don't think you're a boring person. And even if you were, you have a very unboring life. So, like, there's that,
Yeah.
right? Which by the way, y'all, like, I'm just loving this sweatshirt that you're wearing of like, because it's reminding me of all the university sweatshirts, but it's like the university of life, right? Like
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with that.
I deliberately chose this, and it's actually like Life Church. And like,
Mm,
I have been on this faith journey. I'm still like figuring shit out,
yeah.
but it was just an invitation from my dad last August, like, hey, I think you'd really like the live music and the things. And every Sunday, like, the message just hits. Like,
Hmm.
it's been part of my recovery journey. And it doesn't even have to do with religion, it's just applying to life.
Yeah.
And so I chose this. I'm like, I'm choosing life. Okay. We're
Ooh.
choosing life over here. So I was like, I'm wearing this today because, yeah.
Okay. Podcast, YouTube show, podcast over. We're done. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, no, just kidding. I I'm so excited to dive into like different parts of this. So, the first part is the autism part, right?
Mhm.
Are you formally diagnosed?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
that's right. You said that. Okay. So the reason I ask is because there's three humans in our house that, including myself, well, really four, that, when you do the tests, you do the things, you're like, oh, this is quite strong.
Right.
And um already some other neurodivergent
Mhm.
traits. And my goodness gracious, can we have a conversation about leadership and neurodivergence? Because I I think the times that I have been told the most, and I'm curious if this is your experience too, like the times that I have been told the most that I was unprofessional or like I wasn't showing up in a way
Mhm.
that was expected as a leader or as a professor or whomever,
Mhm.
it was those times that I was looking at the neurotypical people around me and being like, what is this? Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it like this? And it wasn't even necessarily from a place of judgment. It was from
Yeah.
a place of like, I legit do not understand why we are doing things the way we're doing them.
Yeah.
Could somebody please
Absolutely.
help me?
Yeah, because like, I feel maybe autistic people, they really do key in on efficiencies.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, you tell me something or it demonstrates, and I'm like, but my brain is not making the connection. Like, why would you take additional steps when you could just do da da da, And so, yeah, there is that like kind of pushback, and it's not necessarily like question your leadership,
Yeah.
but it's really just questioning to make sense in my brain so I can execute your plan to what you want it. But I'm also going to be like, but we could do this. Like, could this be better?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. You
and
just,
also just a sense of justice, justice of the workplace culture. Like, oh my gosh, like, I am kind of like the doctor or a self-appointed steward of our department, because like, people will just, tell me how they're feeling and everything, and I'll take the temperature and go to my boss and be like, we need to cool the temperature down. Like, these, like,
mm,
and I'll see like little injustices or things like this and trust, and I'm like, we gotta help, because the culture also, again, leads to efficiencies and how people do their work. So,
yeah. And you're speaking to something that I think is really important because I think a lot of people do not know this, uh, is that there's this idea that people who are autistic, and by the way, I think this is also, I'm like dovetailing for a second. A lot of places we don't say like black people, or we don't say like people, we say people with this thing. We
mhm,
don't actually create an identity around it. And autism, like most people who are autistic prefer to be like, I'm autistic. Like
yeah,
it's part of my identity,
yeah,
not I'm a person with autism, which is
mhm,
interesting because it's the opposite in a lot of other places. So if you didn't know that, all good. And also just FYI.
yeah.
But I think that most autistic people are really judged unfairly in some places because a lot of times, like, we are way more feeling than people realize. We're
Oh
way more
yeah.
perceptive than people realize. And so it's sometimes when we say the thing or we do the thing, it feels like it's coming from this uncaring or unkind place. And in reality, it's like, no, I feel so much of what's happening right now. Like, I can tell exactly what mood every person in this room is in.
Mhm.
And I can tell like whose words are matching their body language, are matching their tonality, are matching the like, right? So I can tell when what you are saying is not matching how you are feeling. And so that is, I think that's data that a lot of people like either choose to ignore or don't have that capacity for. So like it was so part of my journey. It was so validating to have somebody go, actually, some people who have autism, the diagnosed people who like get missed
Yeah.
are the ones that like almost come across as empaths or come across as like too emotional because
Yeah.
they're picking up on all of it.
Mhm. Like it could be misdiagnosed as just like a highly sensitive person,
Right.
but there is so much more to it. Like if you look at everything, like going back to that room, a room full of people, I'm collecting data every time I walk into a room. I'm looking for the person that I feel is safe, that
Yeah.
looks, like, okay, I'm shy and introverted. Do they have people around them? Do they have a small group? Are they talking to other people? Do I
Mhm.
feel like I could go up and just, all these things happen, and apparently that's not the norm, It's just,
Well, and this is also, I think, such an important part of the conversation too, is that neurodivergence can be and the ability to like really be that perceptive. It can be an inborn trait, or it can also be developed through trauma, through like hypervigilance, right? I've learned to be perceptive of everybody around me because that's how I stay safe. Like
yeah.
if I can catch my parent before they start getting upset, then and I can like play the comedian or like do something, like be the good girl, then they're gonna get less upset. Okay, so I learned to read the room for self-protection. And I do think that for some autistic people, that's a huge part of it, right? Like we learn
Oh
how to
yeah.
mask because we're like, oh, it's not cool for me to hyperfixate on this thing for 2 hours. Like people aren't gonna roll with that.
Mhm.
And also sometimes it really is innate. It's like, and for me, that's it, is I realized, oh, I'm really good at selling and I'm really good at psychology and I'm really good at like helping patients and helping students and helping people get to where they want to go because not be yes, some part because it's innate, also because like that is what I've studied psychology since I was 4. Like I've been doing little mini science experiments and going, I wonder what happens if I say this. I wonder what happens if I do this. I wonder what happens. Ooh, like and I'm curious for you, like when that diagnosis came, because you mentioned for some people it's something that's really validating, and for some people it's more like, and it sounds like for you it was just one more of those what the moments.
Yeah. It was just kind of another like, oh yeah, I'm different. And that was
Mm.
kind of the message and the belief that I'm still holding and trying to work through is I'm different and that's not good, you know.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, so it's like the I'm different is fine.
Mhm.
The I'm different is like, oh, I'm different. And there's a difference between like, oh yeah, I'm different and I'm different.
Yeah.
So it's so the I guess it kind of goes into the reinvention part you were talking about of like, can I shift what that means?
Mhm.
How I ask this because I secretly already know that you do this. Like how do people shift that?
You completely have to take stock of your identity, all those beliefs that you have, really digging deep. And, we all tell ourselves stories every single day. And that's part of, I think it's narrative psychology.
Mhm.
And our brain tells us stories to make sense of something that's happened, you know, and sometimes our brain gets it wrong because it's picking up from past data of like, oh yeah, you remember that instance and this is how we reacted. So let's just do that again. Let's just keep telling ourselves this. And so now after going through like my life coach training, I've you have to train your brain to kind of watch for these things,
Yeah.
because otherwise they're just going to slip on by. You're just going to be like, yeah, that's how I am, sort of thing. And it's not. Like, you really have to stop and be like, where's this coming from? What is the deep-seated belief that this is stemming from? And if you follow the trail, then it can lead you to some like really surprising things where like, oh, I didn't know I was still carrying that, or I didn't think that that event was like really that bad, but it's like something I've held on to, all from childhood. That's when our brains are developing. That's when they're remembering things. And so it really is paying attention to what your brain is telling you, and then kind of giving a little pushback, be like, I don't think that's right. Tell it a new story. And then you've got to find the evidence for that new story rather than looking for the evidence of all the times of like, oh, I'm a shitty person and this is why, because this, and this. Like, no, you've got to deliberately look for the other evidence. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. Like, change is not going to happen overnight. Like, I'm still working on this. Like, but it is like, it's a constant thing. But if you can do it, like, I feel so much better now. And yes, I still struggle, but that is such a key to unlocking mental wellness.
Yeah. As you were saying that, so I think in like analogies, which maybe I don't know if that's an autistic thing or not, but that I'm always like analogy or example. And the thing that popped in my head, because this is part of trauma work too, which you also do, is
Mhm.
understanding, like you said, those past painful experiences.
Yeah.
I'm imagining this river, and you like quote unquote waking up around the age of 8, 9, 10, because really that's when our conscious brain comes online. And like the river is muddy and dirty, and you can't see more than 2 inches below. But like if that's all you remember as your quote unquote river, like you're like, well, that's what my river looks like.
Yeah.
Right. And if somebody goes, hey, did you know that everybody's river doesn't look like poop? Like, did
Yeah.
you know? Like, did you know that they like somebody's been adding stuff into your river? Like somebody's been changing the way that your river looks, and you're like, no, right? Like that's no, like this is how my mom's river looks, this is how my dad's river looks, this is how my grandparents' river looks. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And you go like see a clean river, you're like, wait a second. Right. So then like if you walk upstream from where you've been hanging out and you start to notice like, oh wow, like somebody dumped stuff in at this point, and somebody, diverted like a sewage, like a waste plant at some point this way, and somebody did this and somebody did that. And then you like put a net in the water, or you put a filter in the water at a specific point. And you're like, okay, I'm going to start looking at every single thing that like comes past this point I'm at right now and decide, does it stay in the river, or do I scoop it out? Do I
Mhm.
take it out? Can we talk about that
Yeah.
moment when you like really start taking everything out of the river? Because I know you said that, you got to that point where you were like, my river's too dirty. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Like there's no fixing this. But
Yeah.
then you asked for help.
Mhm.
So like what made you ask for help? And then what, as I guess it's a two-part question. What made you ask for help? And then what made you go, you know what? I'm gonna put a filter in this river and figure this the fuck out.
Well, it's funny because like the week leading up to my hospitalization, I I can now recognize that there were signs that was like, I should have paid attention a little bit more. I should have given myself rest, should have, done all the things or whatever. And it was just kind of like a gradual shutdown of the brain to
Mm,
where, the feelings were feeling too overwhelming. So I'm like crying at work. I can't get it together. Like, they're feeling so out of control that I'm just like at a loss of like, what do I even do?
yeah.
You know? And it just like, my even cognitive functions were going offline of language. I couldn't understand what people were saying to me. Tasks that I was so stellar at, they seem so difficult now. And it was just like a very gradual shutdown. And for whatever reason, as my one side of my brain is saying like, yeah, we just need to be done. We need to, follow through with this. Let's just do it. There was another one that was like ringing a little alarm, like, no, 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 like, come on, there's something really, really wrong. We need some help, like, please. And it was just like, okay, well, let's give it a try. Like, it's really scary. but this is another autistic thing where, you gather data. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to call out my friend who had a stint in the hospital. I'm going to figure out what the stay was like. I'm going to Google what to expect when I go into the hospital, and I'm already thinking like, okay, well, if I did, into my life, these are the things that I need to give to people. And I need to contact these people and say, you take care of this, you take care of that, like
Mhm.
preparations. But once I felt like I knew what to expect going into the hospital, then it felt safe enough to let myself have that
Mhm.
resource. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have. Like I needed that safety.
I got chills as you said that, because this is a thing, right? Like we don't talk about, we're like, call nine, what is it, 988, I
Not,
think.
yes, that's
Right.
98.
Like call or text 988, or, you know, don't don't do it. Like stay
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
For some of our brains, like that is not enough of an answer.
And it's scary because I deliberately didn't text the crisis line because I'm thinking, what if they call the police? What if the police show up to my house?
Right.
What is my mom going to think? Like all these other things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
because there's not really anything out there to say, well, this is how it goes. Like my autistic brain needs step by step.
I'm rolling my, if y'all are watching my facial, I'm so excited that now we're doing the YouTube show instead of the podcast, by the way. Like not just the podcast, because I am so excited for y'all to see my facial expressions during these. Like you're welcome. Like that of, okay, you're telling me to stay here because it gets better. And like
Yeah,
how please, like are there steps I can take to this getting better? Because if you can tell me specifically what I need to do, that has always been such a hard thing for me. And I think this, tying back to this idea of leadership, so often autistic people or people who even just question things because they want to understand it, or because
yeah,
they do need those steps. That's how their brain works. We call, yeah, there's a personality system called bank, and like B is for blueprint. Like I am such a blueprint human. I'm like,
oh
lay
yeah,
out what it is. I may not build it exactly the way you said, but like give me the steps so I can
yeah.
do the thing.
Mhm.
If you're just like, well, we're going to build a house, right?
Like what? That feels so overwhelming. Like
Okay.
how? What's the materials? Like all the other questions start. I'm like, that is
Right.
not enough.
That is not enough. And then the other piece is, and my husband and I have this conversation a lot. I think it's so important for us as leaders to understand that telling someone not to do something, how to not do something, is not the same as telling somebody how to do something.
Yeah.
So you saying like, don't kill yourself. There's no way this is getting monetized on YouTube, by the way. Right? Adult warning content, sensitive material. Like, but seriously, saying like, don't kill yourself, right? You'll regret it. Okay, well, what should I do instead?
Right.
And I used to have this conversation with patients. I've had this conversation with private clients that I've worked with. I'm not a mental health nurse practitioner. I'm really clear about that. Like I am not licensed or certified in that. I'm a certified trauma professional.
Mhm.
I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to that there is a difference between I want to kill myself and I don't want to live like this anymore. And like that is there's such a distinction there. And so if you're going, okay, well, here's how to not kill yourself, I'm like, okay, great. Like, that's awesome. Thank you for laying out that plan. Like, I do appreciate that. And also that tells me nothing
Yeah.
about how do I live differently?
Yeah. How do I get out of this hole? You know, like where's my shovel? What do I do? How do I dig? Like,
Right. I mean, I'll be very transparent. Like when I have some of my most intense shame reactions that I've had, like due to deep childhood stuff, what my brain says is like, people are better off without you.
yep.
What my brain doesn't say is you should kill yourself. What my brain says is like, you should run away and make it look like you're gone. So that way your family can have the insurance money and like they're good and they can do the thing. But like, I don't actually want to die. However, if I went in the hospital and they were like, what is your brain saying to you right now? And I was like, oh, my brain's telling me that everybody's better off without me. Like, I'm in a pink robe. I've gotten all my stuff taken away from me. It doesn't matter. And that alone right there, I think, is what keeps so many people from really owning where they're at, is like the lack of, okay, well, what happens when I do? And like, how are you going to help me get out of it?
Yeah. And that is such a distinction that I think people are afraid to talk about it, because they don't want to say like, I'm thinking about suicide, because then people will,
Yeah.
get really like, you need to go in the hospital, like these
Yeah.
things. But it's actually just like, I'm just really struggling right now. And like,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about it. Like, I don't have intentions to do it. And
Yeah.
that's such an important distinction, because in, even the statistics, it says like, suicide is determined in just like a very quick window.
Right.
It's like a very knee-jerk reaction to end a temporary problem.
Yeah.
And, to me, that was like mind-blowing, because and just the people who think about it but don't get to that step. I was surprised at also how low and how big that number is, because
Yeah.
people make it seem like such a kind of like a pandemic. And I don't want to like lessen it, but I thought there were more people like me, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am kind of in the minority here. And that was something too that I was like, oh, wow, that's sad, because people don't talk about it. They don't talk about like the majority of people are living great lives. Like, yes, there's problems, but they're making it work. Whereas you're feeling like everybody is like this. Why is nobody talking about it?
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's we downplay it and like dramatize it. Is that the right word? No, dramatize it at the
yeah,
same time of, oh my gosh, you're thinking that way. Like, that's not okay. Like, we have to no, like that makes you
yeah,
really different, weird, wrong. And
yeah.
then we are also doing this thing. And I see this a lot in like more, it's fascinating. I see us outwardly talking about it more in younger generations. And then I see older generations be like, oh, everybody feels that way.
Right. Yeah. It's
Like,
like I'm getting so many mixed signals. I don't know what to do, what to believe. Like, who can help me?
well, and talking about this from the professional space, because you had a job, like you were doing a thing,
Mhm,
and even as leaders, some leaders are personally experiencing this, and then other leaders are experiencing, I have an employee, or I have a spouse, or I have a coworker who's like going through this.
mhm.
And I mean, talk about not knowing what to say.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of um the legal piece around it, which is why I think hospitals and mental health professionals like are so reactive around it now. Like, and I don't want to say overreactive. I don't think that it's problematic for us to really care about helping people stay alive.
Mhm.
What I do think is that the approach that we take, where we actually are like, well, we want to make sure we catch everyone, and so we're going to include some people that probably don't even need to be assessed for this in those numbers. That is, I mean, you talked about this happening during the pandemic. I remember as a nurse, you had to ask two questions. You had to say, do you have any, like every person who came in, do you have any intent of hurting yourself or someone else? Right?
Mhm.
Do you have any suicidal or homicidal intent? And then the other question was, have you felt down or depressed more days than not in the last 2 weeks? I'm like, who answers no to that question?
Right. I'm like, I want their life. Like,
I will say, I would answer no to that question
mhm.
after like 5 years of work, but like so many people, I mean, what am I'm supposed to flag you and like do a bigger suicide and like harm assessment at that point? I mean, you're
Mhm.
getting hospitalized, for Pete's sakes. Like,
Yeah.
you haven't felt down or depressed that you have cancer and you had to have a bone marrow transplant and now you're back in the hospital and now I have to like ask you all these extra questions. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. I do. I get it from a legal side and I get it from an ethical side. And also, like, is there not a better way for us to do this?
Right.
And that might be the autism. That might be the like the efficiency piece of
Mhm.
me going like, 80% of people are going to say yes to that second question. So like, why are we asking it? Like, why don't we just go through the other questions and say, we ask everybody these questions. So like we catch everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And going back to that piece of, people not being there who really kind of don't belong there. That was one of my like biggest things while in the ER was the drug addicts and things like that. They were all in with the people who were in a mental health crisis. And
Yes.
that was way more traumatizing than if I was just, with people who were like me, who, mental breakdown versus someone who's coming off of, meth. Like there is a very distinct difference where the police are kind of like holding people there because like they can say it and then it's like, oh, well, I'll go here instead of jail sort of thing. And like there was one guy who was just like so upset that they took his phone, like he was screaming and cussing. And my mom had come to visit me too, and she was like she didn't want to leave me there with somebody like that too. And of course, where does he get stationed? He gets right outside my door, because there's no beds available. So he's just right outside my door. I'm afraid to go out to just go use the bathroom, and it's like there needs to be a distinction too of like, okay, we've got the addicts, we'll give them their, specific type of care and what they need. And then the people who are in the mental health crisis who are like really considering leaving this planet and they really need like that kind of resources, we'll keep them over here, which I have high hopes because here in the Wichita area, they just got approved to build a new mental health facility, like strictly based on mental health. And they did mention that there was going to be separate holding places. And I'm like, oh, please, thank you, because it makes such an impact when you're there and you're already scared. And then you see the effects of like drugs and stuff on other people. It's such a different thing,
Yeah. They're both mental. And actually, let's talk about this.
Okay.
They're both health crises, right? I was watching a TikTok with, I think it's John Delaney yesterday. And he was like, can we please stop separating out mental health from physical health, from spiritual health, from financial health, from relational health? Like, this is not like, we are not doing ourselves any favors by pretending that people who have really significant or treatment refractory depression or suicidality or any of these things, like that they probably don't also have some physical things going on. They probably don't also have some financial things going on. They probably don't also have some spiritual things. One of the biggest contributors to suicidality and feeling like I don't want to be here anymore is a lot of I see this a lot when people are deconstructing their faith. They're like, what's the point? What's the point of being alive anymore? Like, I don't even understand. And relationally, do we want to talk about what depression and anxiety and trauma and all of those things do to our relationships? Like, goodness gracious. So this idea that we're going, okay, well, all of these people have a mental issue, so they all go in together, right? And having been done clinicals in places like I used to have to go into the ER quite a lot to admit my patients, and that's a hodgepodge of a lot of humans. That idea of what you just said, I'm going to treat this person who's in here for active substance use, whether it's they're trying to get clean or it's they are, they did something while under the influence of substances and got in trouble and are here to be like evaluated to make sure that they are safe to go into the criminal systems, which that's another story for another day. There's so much here, but like, I think that this is why I think this conversation is so important, because it's so complex, right? Like, we have oversimplified it in some places and gone, you know what, let's just put everybody together and handle it the same way. And then we've also over stratified it in some places and gone, okay, we're gonna only look at suicidality from a mental health perspective. And it's like, and we're gonna give them some SSRIs, we're gonna give them some medications to help them get more their neurotransmitters get more balanced out, and then we're gonna send them out and good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stay alive. See you later.
Yeah.
Which is why I want to talk about the work that you're doing now, because like it's so stinking cool. So can you tell everybody about the group that you've put together?
Sure. Yeah. So like I recognized after a while, like there are a lot of groups for people who have lost someone to suicide, and that's phenomenal. And there is also a lack of like support groups and stuff for the people who have been there, who have nearly attempted or who did attempt and survived or who have been hospitalized like I have. There's not really any support groups out there for that. It's really unfortunate because that's such a unique experience and there's a lot that, to unpack from that.
Mhm.
And so I started a Facebook group. It's called the Semicolon Society, and with the hope of just getting people not only locally here in group in person, but also just across the nation, even the world, of just having people coming together and supporting one another, just, witnessing the struggles, sharing tips of like how you've rebuilt, how are you doing, but also just, openly sharing your struggles, sharing your experience. And yeah, my hope is to like hold in-person groups here in the Wichita area, and then even just holding virtual support group for whoever can't make it in person. And we're very small right now, but my goal this year is to really just kind of like grow it. Like I'm thinking real big, like contact news stations, and all the things, like a mailing brochure. Like I have brochures, and so going to therapist's office and like, advertising it, mailing it to the hospital that I was at. But I just like I really want to reach those people who, yeah, we were kind of put out into the world, and then it's like, well, read this material, to kind of help
Yeah.
you. But there's really no integration in community to help you heal
Yeah.
from this very unique traumatic experience.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like gonna self like shamelessly brag that I got to be part of like the process of
Yes,
you
you did.
developing this.
Yes. Thank you.
And also like I think it's for anyone who doesn't know what the semicolon means. Can you just talk on
Mhm.
that for a second?
Yeah, the semicolon was created by a gal. I'm so sorry, I forget her name right now. And unfortunately, she lost the battle with
Hmm.
her mind, and she
Yeah.
ended up dying by suicide. But it was created because it's a symbol to say that your story is not over.
Yeah.
Like the author could have ended this sentence with a period, but instead they
Mm.
chose a semicolon to continue that sentence. And so it's like your journey isn't a period. You still get to write the
Yeah.
story.
Which is so beautiful, right? Like it's this, okay. Um, and I think it also does something that we talk about in the trauma world. Uh, in the trauma spaces when we educate on trauma, we talk about big T's and little T's. So we
Mhm.
talk about, trauma that's the little T's are like the paper cuts that you get over and over and over
Yeah.
and over. And like, I don't know if anyone's I got a paper cut this morning, actually. I'm over here going, and I was like, son of a biscuit, like this hurts, right?
They hurt.
But then I forgot. And
Mhm.
until we just had this conversation, I'm looking down, I can see it now. But like, if you then gave me a paper cut every day for the next 100 days on that spot, I wouldn't forget about it. It'd be very
Mhm.
raw and very like that would affect how I moved through my
Mhm.
daily life, right? And the semicolon makes me think of the bigger T's, like the sledgehammer traumas of, there's a before and there's an after.
Mhm.
And I love the reinvention, right? The
Yeah.
reframing of, okay, before I um, you know, uh tried to complete suicide, which I love the language shift on that too, not
Yeah.
commit suicide, like it's a crime, like complete suicide. Before I tried to complete suicide and after it didn't happen.
Mhm.
And like it's really what you talked about at the beginning of what am I going to make this mean?
Mhm.
And also I just think it's so important to have the conversation of, some people have multiple semicolons. There are multiple times in their life where they're like, I don't want to I don't want to do this
Mhm.
anymore, like this anymore. And whether you you know, try to end it with a period, or you're like, you know what, I'm just thinking about it, I'm not going to do it, and you don't do
Yeah.
it. That's not a morality issue. Like, it doesn't make you more moral if you're like, oh, well, yeah, I've thought about it a bunch, but I never tried it. Or if you're like, nope, I tried it and it didn't work. Right. Or I kind of tried it as a, I remember hearing this, like, oh, this person took a bunch of pills, so they weren't
Mhm.
really trying. This was a cry for attention. Like, they're trying to get
Ugh.
attention. And I'm like, okay, should we give them some?
Right. Yeah.
What do you
Like,
think?
and that goes, along with self-harm. I was never one to self-harm because, again, autism and overthinking. I'd be like, I
Yeah.
would cut my vein and I would be, bleeding on the floor and I would die.
It's not,
And
I'm
that
sorry.
was,
It's not funny. It is
but
funny,
it is funny. Like, that's what kept me from it, because I'm like, I would be that one person that would do it.
right.
And again, like, I wasn't wanting to end my life, but it was something. It was like, and it was like a cry for attention where I did it, in my 30s, and part of me really wanted somebody to see and comment and like give me attention, be like, how can I help you?
Yeah.
While the other part of me is like, I'm so ashamed. Why did I do this? I want to hide this. Like, it really hurts. And that's like horrible. It's
Mm,
like there's a very weird thing. So,
yeah. Well, and I'm grateful you shared that, because this is also something that I learned. I was a nail biter, and
oh, yeah.
right. And so one of the things I learned is, like, self-harm is sometimes it's a cry. It's like, please see me and notice that I'm not okay. And sometimes it's a, ooh, this pain like makes me feel more alive, and it releases endorphins and pain relieving chemicals in my entire body
Yeah.
that then help me feel better. So, like, I've noticed that when I get into a very deep shame state, I'll take my nails, now that I don't bite them, and I'll dig them into my
Ooh.
palms, like, to the point that I'll leave like indents.
Mm-hmm.
And when I notice myself doing that, I'm like, oh, okay, we are more dysregulated than we realized, because you're causing yourself pain to keep yourself present.
Yeah.
You're not doing it so somebody's like, oh my gosh, like, why are you hurting yourself? You're doing it so that you can, like, discharge some of the energy that is coursing through your body right now.
Yeah. It's kind of like put your attention somewhere else from like
Right.
this really painful thing. Now I'm going to put it towards, my arm that's like on fire now,
Right.
like,
Yeah. Well, and that is a trauma response. I want to be so clear about that. Like, some people think, oh, people are choosing to do that. I'm like, listen, that is a natural way of getting morphine dumped into your body. Like, causing yourself that bit of pain, it seems weird, but like, that is a way to go to have a temporary escape
yeah.
from the very real emotional pain that, like, you don't know a way out of.
Mhm.
And that's trauma work, and that's nervous system regulation work. And if anybody listening or watching can figure out why we're not teaching that in school, please let me know, because I would really
Uh,
like to go back to kindergarten and have a whole class on trauma responses and how to properly stay in my body and feel my
yeah.
feelings. Like, that would be great.
Mhm.
I learned that at, I'm looking at my watch, like 33.
Yeah. In the 30s.
Yeah. And so it's just, there's so much. And I think that this is important for anyone listening who leads people as well, whether you're a parent or you know, uh, lead people at church, like volunteer, or you
Yeah.
uh, have employees, like, whatever, or you just lead yourself, that counts.
Mhm.
Like, you struggling to stay in your body, both like presence wise and physically, like life wise, that's not a morality issue. That's a, I'm experiencing so much either literal or figurative pain that my body and brain are trying to figure out a way out of this.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny, like you're touching on this now because I just realized the other day, I the only way I could describe it is like it's an out of body experience right now, is what I'm feeling.
Okay.
And oh,
No, keep
yes.
going. But
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you, no, I'm not gonna, please continue. I
Okay.
got so excited.
Well, and like it's so new to me, it felt surreal, but I was like, I have to figure out like I need to give this a name because I have the knowledge now to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to trace back to like when did I start feeling like this? And it was January 4th, and I was in the office, and um it was just another day, things were going well. Then all of a sudden we hear one of one of our coworkers. She's kind of like, it sounds kind of like she's laughing or she's scared about something. And so we just kind of played it off, but it didn't stop. And so then we're like, okay, something is really wrong.
Mm.
And by the time I come around the corner, her office is like right here. I could see one of the assistants. She had this very serious look on her face, and she's just like, one moment. And so we're like, oh, this is really bad.
Mm.
And then it was about 10 minutes later, another one of the assistants came by and she said, we'll just call her Jeannie.
Yeah.
Um, Jeannie's dad was shot at the
Ugh.
Y, and we didn't know anything about it. We thought maybe it's an active shooter situation. Like
Yeah.
we were kind of scared, like what else is happening? And then like 10 more minutes go by, and it turns out it was self-inflicted. And so um, that just like instantly like triggered
Mhm.
me. I I got up. I went down to the second floor bathroom because I'm like, our third floor bathroom sees too much action. I don't want people coming in that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went down into the stall and I just like cried and cried. And I'm thinking, uh, we saw firsthand like receiving that news of someone ending their life. My heart was breaking for her. My heart was breaking for her dad, who,
Mhm.
got to that point of just feeling like that's the only way out. It rang true to me, and bring all those feelings up and just, thinking of my mom, would that be how she reacted if she found me in the house,
Yeah.
Um, the anger towards, we don't have resources. How could this have gotten caught? And then me thinking like I can't save everybody because like I'm wanting to do this work and I'm wanting to help people, but you can't help everybody. Like it was just so much. And so I was worthless for the rest of the day. I went home and cried multiple times because I'm just replaying that in my head,
Yeah.
those sounds. And the next day I like slept even more. And then it got scary because it was reminiscent of how I felt when I got home from the hospital,
Mhm.
where like brain couldn't really function, tasks were really difficult to do. My mom was talking to me, but I really couldn't understand her. And so then I would get frustrated and I would cry, it was just like full body exhaustion. And it was scary because I'm like, oh, I remember this feeling. I remember what, how we got there.
Yeah.
And since then, I haven't really been able to, like, I don't really enjoy things. Like, I'm not really excited about things. I don't really feel negative about it. I just feel kind of indifferent. And then I was just telling my therapist this yesterday because I'm like, it's almost to the point of like, I don't even feel like I was in the hospital. Like that doesn't feel real. That doesn't feel like it happened to me. And then it leads to all of this of like, am I an imposter then? Because like, how am I able to speak and help people if that really didn't happen to me? And that it's so weird to just
Mm.
be here. And I'm like, ah, and
Okay.
it's like,
Okay. Of course, that happened right before
yeah,
this. What people
yeah.
don't know is like we've tried to do this like a couple times, hasn't worked. Of course that happened, and now we're here.
I know, and I was so afraid to like bring it up because I was like, I had been so excited to do this, and now
Yeah.
I'm like, uh, and I'm like, well, why is that? And it's like it's the parts of me feel like it's shutting down of like, oh well, we don't think about that. It feels so distant now. Like that
Mm.
didn't happen, and I'm like, what?
So This is actually really fascinating, and I am curious. Like, I don't know. I'm curious because, okay, first of all, I just want to witness you.
Thank you.
That is awful.
Yeah.
And for anybody watching this who's like had that experience, just witnessing you as well. I haven't had that particular experience. However, I've been in rooms where we've, many an ICU hospital room where things did not go the way that we were
Yeah.
expecting them to go. And you can't like put words, you talking
Uh-huh.
about hearing her
Yeah.
reaction, like I can still hear in my brain very
Mhm.
clearly like things that have happened. So like just resonating with you around that, the impact of that.
Mhm.
And I want to back up and just tell a little bit of my story about this just because I think it'll make this clearer. When um I was never hospitalized
Mhm.
for my severe anxiety and panic disorder, like severe. Um and when I experienced June of 2021, so what we realized was is that I had a childhood sexual assault occur. It's so funny how we say things like that. I'm going to say that again. I was assaulted as a child,
Yeah.
and um we use that like interesting bystander victim
Yeah.
oppressor language, and
Mhm.
I was like, no, I this was not just something that happened to me, like somebody did this to me. I was assaulted as a child, uh what we believe to be, on a for a more long-term basis.
Mhm.
I don't have specific memories. I have a few specific memories, but like
Mhm.
it happened away from home. It wasn't with my parents. And so we went on a family trip 16 hours away. It was one of the first vacations that my husband and I had ever been on with our kids without either set of our parents. And so we drove and we got down to this house, and I had been having like some breakthrough panic symptoms the 2 to 3 weeks before that. No idea why. I was like, I don't know what
Mhm.
this is. And when we got down there, the being away from my parents, being away from those parental figures did something.
Wow.
And when we walked in that house, there was like a specific smell. There was, we know
Wow.
that those types of sensory things
Yeah.
can like bring back. And for 3 days, my body was like, "You're gonna die. You're dying. You're dying. You're dying.
Gosh.
You're dying." Like my heart rate was like 130. I was
Oh.
like having that. If anyone's ever missed the stair and like
Oh, yeah.
gone one stair, but imagine feeling that way for 72 hours straight with like nothing. Like I tried muscle relaxers, I tried alcohol, I tried everything. And I'm with my kids.
Oh.
And it's not like we can just fly home,
Mhm.
right? So I'm going through that, having conversation with I think I probably called my mom and my sister, like they talked for me for hours. But I share that because that when we got home led me to start EMDR therapy. And let me tell you, there were some moments in there that I was like, no, like I don't want to do, I don't think I want
Yeah.
to do this anymore. And so eye movement desensitization reprocessing, basically it's a way to get your brain to integrate the disjointed memories of what happened to you in traumatic experiences in your past.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of connections that get made, right?
Yeah.
And that whole period of my life, I was experiencing something called derealization, where I was like, I feel like I know this is me and I know I'm in my body, but like I feel like the world is not this. I feel really weird, like
Yeah.
really weird. And then we cleared like a really big core trigger.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, like my stomach ache stopped and my panic got so much better. And like all of these things just started really getting better. And about, I don't know, a couple months after that, something uh really sad happened, impactful happened. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, my derealization's back. Like, cause I feel so weird going
Mhm.
through this like traumatic thing. And I remember sitting down on my therapist's couch and I was like, I'm having this out of body experience. This is why I got so excited when you said that. And she said, Lee, are you having an out of body experience? Or are you having an in-body experience? She said, are you, for the first time that you can remember, processing your feelings and trauma in the moment? And I was like, tell me more.
Yes, tell me more.
He's like, well, so I thought of that when you said the thing about the bathroom, because you didn't just go numb. You were like, oh, I'm going to have some really strong emotions. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to feel those emotions. And then I'm going to go home and I'm going to feel those emotions some more. And then I'm going to feel those things some more. And yeah, I'm going to have some anhedonia and like not really excited about doing things, which are very natural reactions to an acute stress response, like, or part of an acute stress response. So I'm over here going like, Traci, are you out of body? Or is this the first time that you're like, oh, this is what it feels like to just like process it as it happens?
That is wild.
Because it's like, it's normal for you to maybe feel a little depressed. It's, and this is, I think this goes back to the autism thing. I always thought that it was weird to feel as deeply as I did.
Oh, yes.
And so I spent my whole life going like, well, no, you need to feel the way everyone else feels. And I've had the very recent realization of like, no, what's actually the healthiest for you is to like feel so deeply in the moment and ride the wave.
Yeah.
Like, just feel it.
Yeah.
And don't take it out on other people.
No. Yeah.
Like, don't direct it at other people. But like, when you told me that story, I was like, well, that sounds like a perfectly natural, healthy reaction to hearing that somebody did something that's closely tied to what you experienced before. And it also makes sense that that feels like in the distance. Because when I now talk about when you are so used to your trauma, like not being healed, there's a study or like a paper that it's I always love when science is like, we discovered this thing. And I'm like, no shit, Sherlock, really? Like, I think it was in a weird place, like the Harvard business or like the I can't remember. I'll have to find it. We'll put it in the show notes. But they were talking about, hey, we put people in fMRI machines that had PTSD. And when we asked them about memories that were connected to their PTSD, the parts of their brain that actively in the moment process things lit up. But when we asked them about memories that they don't have PTSD around, they're the parts of the brain that remember the past lit up. So it looks like memories that have a link to trauma that feel traumatic, the brain processes them and feels them like they're happening in the moment. So it makes sense that like, if you have done all of that work, that you're like, man, that experience feels like a long time ago. It's supposed to.
That feels good to hear.
Right?
I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. I wanted to just like, it was such a gift when my therapist said that to me. I was like, that's why I got so excited. I was like, oh, I get to tell her that, guess what?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a problem. That's how we're supposed to feel when bad shit happens.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, and there was no like trying to stuff it down.
Right.
You know, some people can just be like, nope, I'm not dealing with it. Like, just ignore it. But like, that was so big. There was no way, there was no other way to do it rather than go through it.
But there was like, I think I want you to hear that. And I want anyone else who is listening and resonating with this, like to hear that. Like, yeah, there were other ways to go about that.
Not healthy ways.
Right. But you coulda.
Yeah.
You have now reinvented yourself to the point where you're like, you know what? Yes, there are other ways. Like, I could shove this down. I could go eat, drink,
Yeah.
do whatever with my feelings. I could do those things. I'm not saying anybody's wrong for doing those things. that's not the way I'm choosing. I'm going to go down to the second floor bathroom and like cry my eyes out.
Yeah. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to take care of myself. Mm-hmm.
I think I'm grateful. Like, I'm so grateful that you were vulnerable enough to share this here, because that's leadership right there. That's self-leadership of like, hold on, I could do something in the moment that would feel better, that would negatively impact me in the long term. Ooh, that's a whole metaphor to everything we're talking about. I could do something, like you said, it's a split second decision. I could do something in the moment because I don't know how to tolerate this distress that is going to hurt me or someone else later. Or I can do the very uncomfortable thing right now and know that like a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, I'm gonna be like, oh, that sucked. And also, oh, okay, I feel better.
Yeah. And like, and I had even, like, I was so nervous to even just be here today because I told my therapist that I was kind of feeling this way. And she was like, well, why don't you just tell her? Just be upfront about it. And I'm like, that is a good thing, because I'm like, she is all about trauma and this is like a trauma response. Like there is no perfect way. She's like, yeah, just be upfront about it. And so I'm like, okay.
Okay. Well, first of all, I feel like we need to just shout out your therapist, because she
I know
sounds like a great human. And
she's so
like,
good.
right, if you need a therapist in Wichita, it sounds like we've got one.
Yep.
We'll get her waitlisted. It'll be fine. And that, but like that links back to everything we've been talking about of like, can you just tell people? You know, my husband has publicly talked about this. He's had 2 psychiatric hospitalizations. And I remember when they gave him one of the diagnoses they gave him, I was like, that's not right. Like, that's not what this is. And I remember it was such a stigmatized diagnosis that I was like, he's never going to talk to anybody about this. Like, we barely talked about it. He didn't tell his family for a while that it had happened. And I didn't tell anybody around me. I was just like, when my husband got sick and he's in the hospital, like they didn't know, because that right there is so stigmatized. And like, there's a difference between me being like, yeah, I'm having a really rough day, and I'm able to be like open and vulnerable about that. And I'm not gonna like, you didn't put it on me to fix it for you. You also didn't like shove it down and pretend that it wasn't a thing. You were just like, yeah, like I'm still kind of feeling this thing out. And like, that's again self-leadership of, okay, I'm willing to talk about this thing that other people aren't willing to talk about, because I know that that's what's best for me. And I also only put myself in situations and places where I do feel at least somewhat comfortable talking about it.
Well, and it was thanks to you and your encouragement that I like took that leap to put out in public on Facebook that, hey, I was hospitalized. I did that for Mental Health Awareness Month in May of last year, because going into the hospital, only my mom and a few people knew. Like my boss, I told my boss, like I'm going to the hospital. And so it was just kind of this secret between me and my mom. Like, and it felt like this, like a dirty little secret that we're keeping from the entire family of like, I was hospitalized because I wanted to kill myself. And so for the longest time, like we didn't tell anybody. I did tell my dad on Christmas Eve, and that felt good. But other than that, like I didn't tell anybody. Like very few people at work knew while I had been gone and why I was suddenly remote and all these things. And because it is like you're so stigmatized of like, what are people going to think of me now? They think I can't handle my shit. They think like I'm crazy. They think,
Uh,
padded walls and all these things, or, and so,
yeah.
yeah, I didn't talk about it because it just like, what are they going to think of me? And so then with your encouragement of like, this is a thought leader and I'm wanting to step up and I'm wanting to put a purpose for why I went through this shit, because like that can't be it, like this
Yeah.
has to be a greater cause. And so I'm going to take that and hopefully go and help other people at least, not feel so embarrassed or ashamed that like, hey, you needed some help. That's basically all it is. Like you just needed some extra help.
Yeah. Well, and I, your willingness to tell that story right there, you and I are both spiritual humans. Like, I'm over here going, of course, like, I know I already said that, but of course that happened, because of course now I get to share like one of the most fundamental life-changing things and perspective shifting things that happened
Yeah.
for me on my journey. And of course we're saying it on the show so that all these other people can hear it and watch it and go, oh, wait a second. Am I because there's this thing that happens on the reinvention and like healing journey where you've been spent so much time trying to understand why you do the things that you do that you start like pathologizing the things that you do when you heal, and you're like, oh man, like I'm feeling sad, and you're like, of course you're feeling sad. Like, of course you are, of course that was activating, of course that was a thing. Like that that is something that when you've invalidated or had the
Mhm.
experience invalidated for such a long time, and then you go through the healing process, sometimes you continue the self-invalidation
Yeah.
without realizing it.
Yeah.
Like you put down, like the trauma's gone, the self-invalidation is not. So you're like, oh, I should be able to just like get over this, and you're like, no, that's not actually,
Hmm.
that's just you swinging to the other side.
Yeah.
Right? Like I love that journey for you, that you're no longer externalizing your emotions on people, but the healed part doesn't mean that you then don't feel anything. That's not how this works.
Hmm.
What I want to go back to the how this ties into the autistic piece too, I think, because there's a lot of invalidation of the self that happens on that side too. Like
Yeah.
masking is invalidation of the self. You're going like,
Yeah.
I can't show up the way that I'd like to show up
Mhm.
because people will judge me. And I'm gonna say a thing. I'm just gonna warn everybody, because somebody said this to me. It was one of those thank you, I hate it moments. They were like, you keep judging other people in your assumption that they're going to judge you.
Mm.
Like, your masking is doing two things. One, you're judging other people that they can't handle who you are. And two, you are like self-invalidating that you can't handle if they do judge you. And I was like, well, shit.
Yeah. Like, oh, that hits.
And I'm curious, like, has that shown up on your reinvention journey of realizing, ooh, I mean, you just talked about it. Like, I shared on Facebook about this thing that I was like so afraid people were going to judge me for. And then and then what? Like several people joined your group.
Yeah.
And I bet some of them you were like, oh, you
Yes. Yeah.
really?
And some people like I don't even know. And I'm like, cool, yeah, you learned from so and so. Great. I love you. Yeah, like love to have you here.
How is that? Have you seen that any other places in your life? Like, I think that's maybe a little bit of your spiritual journey too, as well.
Mhm. Ask the question again. Because my brain is like going all around in circles. It's like, yes.
All good. I was just, I'm curious, like, have you noticed there's been places that now that you've really gone, okay, I like myself more. I
Mhm.
accept myself more. I've done a lot of this healing and reinvention work. Like now the part I get to work on is me judging other people, like me being more vulnerable with other people or like looking at things through a more trauma informed or forgiving lens, I guess.
Oh yeah. Like because the autism also comes with, very black and white, all or
Yeah.
nothing thinking. And so, yeah, I just last night, I don't remember what it was, but I was like, "Oh, there I go judging again," and like catching myself. I'm like, "Oh, that's a judgment. That's not just like a." And so it's like, okay, well, can we unpack it a little bit to
Mhm.
just see if like you want to stick with that and believing that, or do you kind of want to be curious and open? So it's
Mm.
really like pausing and asking yourself, do you want to continue believing this? And sometimes the answer is like, yes,
Yeah.
I don't have the capacity and I don't want to. Like, I am sticking with this. And
Yeah.
the other one's like, yeah, you're right. Like, thinking through and all things. And it's like, give them grace as well because you deserve it too. Like, you're no saint and, you're not perfect. And so,
Mhm.
but yeah, so definitely,
Mm.
definitely.
Yeah. There's I appreciate that you said, I asked myself the question and what I heard is I don't make myself wrong if the answer is like, yeah, I would like to keep believing that that person is not
Yeah.
kind or like that they're a jerk.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's what your brain needs. Your brain needs to like it needs permission to be judgmental to be able to let go of the judgment.
Mhm.
It's basically like, can you let me roll with this idea for 5 minutes until I get bored with it and then I'll let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see this with my kids. Like there's this book that I just finished called what is it? I don't oh, now I'm gonna have to find it. I Oh, it's like I don't need to fix other people or like I'm not responsible for other people's I can't remember. I'll drop in the show notes, but
Mhm.
um it I was so mad at this book because it's basically talking about attunement, which we've chatted
Uh-huh.
about in our
Yeah.
spaces. And so for anyone who's not familiar with the word, attunement is quite simply being intentional about how you pay attention to something, right? Someone. So I'm going to give this thing or this idea or myself or this person my undivided attention and I'm going to accept it unconditionally as it is. I'm not going to judge it. I'm just
Mhm.
going to like put it in front of me and see it and be with it and like let it be.
Mhm.
And so this book is talking about emotional validation. And as I'm like 30 to 40 pages in, I'm like, oh, they're talking about attunement. Like when they're saying
Mhm.
emotional validation, they're saying attunement. And so this book literally teaches you like whenever somebody comes to you with a problem or a feeling, which sometimes we see feelings as problems to fix,
Yes.
just be with them.
Mhm.
Just witness them and be like, oh, that sounds really hard. Or like, oh, I can only imagine if I were in your shoes. Like I would probably be really frustrated too. Like the whole thing throughout the book, they say, listen, 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 understand, right?
Mm.
Listen to be present, listen to like to gain deeper clarity, listen to validate, and then understand. Like, and once you understand, that's when you're like, okay, how could I help? Or I have an idea if you're open to it. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Like, is it a good time to share that?
Mhm.
I've started using this with my kids and with my husband and with my parents and with my sister and with my clients and with everybody. And I am so annoyed at how well it works. But mostly I've started using it with myself. And what I've noticed is that there's this period of like you just have to be able to own whatever is coming through and coming up at that moment. And it's normally about like 3 to 5 minutes of just listening and listening some more and going, oh, I wonder like what makes you say that? Not why, because that can feel judgmental. Like what?
Yeah.
Okay, what makes you say that? What do you think is causing that? Right. You can ask questions to gain deeper understanding. And then almost always at like that 3 to 5 minute mark, the person will be like, okay, you know what? Maybe I was like being a little narrow minded.
Mhm.
Maybe okay, well, I don't really hate that. I was just, you know, they like pull themselves right back out of it. And when I do it with myself, it works too. If I just give myself like the 3 to 5 minutes to just feel the thing and like be judgmental or be like, no, I do hate that person. Like they're a jerk. After 5 minutes, my brain's like, okay, like we're kind of bored of that. Have you, when you ask yourself that question of like, do I want to believe this or not?
Mhm.
And your brain says yes, how long do you find like that sticks around?
I don't think it's very long. It's just like, "Oh, okay, cool. We made a decision. Next." Like like, "Great.
Check.
Yep."
I love that. I love that. You're like 2 seconds, move on.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does your brain do when it's like, no, I actually don't want to believe that? Like, what does that process look like for you?
Then it's kind of like so the first, like, simile or analogy, whatever you wanna call it, is imagining, like, the water in a toilet bowl just swirling around. It just like my brain just kinda, continues to ask questions, just swirl around, think on it, munch on it, like, kinda dwell on it. Then it might get into that, like, hyperfixating part of
Okay.
it until it comes to, like, yeah, something that feels comfortable, something that feels good.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say it kinda just swirls in there for a bit.
Are you, does it feel more comfortable for your brain, like to let your brain just chew on it than it used to?
Yes. Oh gosh. My 1 second. One of the dogs busted through the room,
You know
and
what?
now she's, like, locked herself in here with
I'm
me.
obsessed. I'm
Oh,
surprised my guy hasn't completely lost his mind. Go take care of it. You're
1 second.
good. Take your time. This is real life, y'all. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Traci, that was
Yes.
so unprofessional.
Oh my gosh, I know. I was like, "No way they're gonna be coming in here," and
No,
because
I'm
their
obs
mama's gone.
I'm obsessed. Like, here's the thing. When we talked about doing this show, I was like, look, I really want to, unless somebody's like, that has to be edited out, I don't want to edit it.
Sweet, okay, yeah, I wasn't
No,
sure.
because like that's real life right there.
Yeah.
And that, can we talk about that? Can we talk about
Yeah.
the fact that like so many times as leaders or in professional roles, we're like, oh, okay, so shit, I'm on this recording and my dog's in here and oh my gosh, they're gonna bark and we're like, right?
Yeah.
It's oh gosh, what are they gonna think of me? Again, it's that I'm worried I'm gonna get judged. How do I try to control them judging me?
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody watching this, Traci, if you have the answer to how you can control people judging you, like please write it. Send me an email.
Yeah.
Let me know. I haven't figured it out.
Yeah. And that's such a hard thing to learn. Like I'm still working through that of like because you mask in order for to have people not judge you
Right.
or in the hopes of people not judging you. But they're
Yeah.
still going to judge you, like regardless of what you do. So there is no control for other people's reactions.
And like they judge your mask. So
Yeah.
then if whether they like you or they don't, you still don't know if they like you or they don't, because either way, they either love your mask or they hate your mask. And I'm like, but
Yeah.
that's still not me. So then I still don't even know. And I don't know, maybe I've just reached a point in my life that I feel like the older you get, like the less fucks you have to give to people. And I'm just at the point where I'm like, I cannot spend one of my valuable fucks on trying to figure out if you like me or not.
See, it's so wild because I'm the opposite, and I have yet to find somebody who is like that, of where, like, growing up and in high school, like, I didn't give a fuck what people thought of me. I would wear whatever I wanted, do whatever, like, all the things. And as I've gotten older, something has shifted to where I'm like, I've I always called it like the George Costanza complex, to where I'm like, I need everybody to like me.
Yeah.
I need that, otherwise it's gonna bother me and I'm gonna ruminate on it.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
gotten worse as I've gotten older, and I'm like, ah.
but you know what? It got worse as I got older until I had some very, very real painful experiences that were like, oh, you gonna look at this. So I don't, maybe this gets to just be the worst it gets for you and then
Yeah,
you get to be done. Like maybe we don't have to have any major thing happen that's like, oh, you
yeah.
gonna look at this. That Yeah, I had several moments where I had people tell me like, "You can't show up like that. You can't do that." Like, I had so many moments in my adult life where it was like, "You are not showing up the way that we expected or we need you to." And the most frustrating part about that was I was trying really hard. So it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to try really hard to be who and how you want me to be, and it's still not going to work, fuck it. Like, and I actually did swing a little too far into the other camp where I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks about me. Like, you can hate me. If you don't like me, go find less. Like, it was very fight energy.
Mhm.
It was still very like, I'm trying to protect myself. There goes my dog. See, there we go. I don't know if you can hear him, but um, so it took me a while to like find the balance of it. And I want to be so clear. There are moments when people that I really like, and I find out they don't like me, like that crushes me.
Yeah.
Like I feel so sad. I don't feel sad because I don't like myself. I feel sad because I'm like, man, I would have really loved to have a relationship with that person. I think we could have had a really cool whatever. And that's a place that I've actually had to like let myself feel that of like there's some grief in there and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you have to hate yourself or change yourself or try to mask back up or armor back up. Like I don't have to do that. And like it's like what we were talking about like am I going to go cry in the bathroom? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, to that grief point, my former best friend, like, it makes me really sad that she's not, here kind of witnessing this journey I've
Mm,
been on, and this, and I did tell her, like, I apologize for, how I handled things,
yeah.
because, like, there was so much, and now, like, I've learned from
Yeah.
it, but it wasn't fair to you at the time for me to, put all these things on you.
Yeah.
But she's not around to see, this whole transformation. And it's sad because I'm like, oh, what would it be like if we
Yeah.
were friends now?
Yeah. But like maybe your new best friend gets to see it and then I don't say that to like minimize the experience because like again
Yeah.
been there like deeply witnessing you in that and I just I think it's exhausting to there are people in my life that I don't have to do anything for them to love me, you know
Mhm.
and I think that having that experience has made it easier to let go of the people that like need me to be a certain way for them to love me.
Mhm.
And I just like, I know how cool you are. So I'm over here just going, well, of course her new best friend's going to find her now and she's going to get to practice like just being herself. those things because like, but that's part of the journey is, you know, for me, okay, to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about earlier, there were stages of, okay, everybody's better off without me, to, all right, my family's better off without me, but like, I'm really good at my work and I'm really good with my patients and I'm really good with my clients, to, okay, you know what? I think my family does actually benefit from me being here. And like, maybe I am a blessing to other people and not just a burden. Like, maybe I'm both. To then, like, okay, sometimes I do things that are burdensome and I'm not a burden and I'm a blessing. To then, wait, do I actually like who I am? Is that, oh, are we starting to like ourselves? Like, are we getting to the point that we care about the impact we have on other people and we're not willing to harm ourselves because we like ourselves so much? And like, that's kind of the place I'm at now, where when the shame stories start to like pop up, one happened yesterday. My husband said something to me that was like, later on when I was coming out of the shame experience that I had, and I repeated back to him, I was like, this is what my brain heard. And he was like, that's not even close to what I said. And I'm like, I know it doesn't matter what you said. But as I was going through that, it was like, talking about moving through the emotions.
Yeah.
It was weird. Like, for the first time, I was having a shame experience, and also remembering that I liked who I was. So it was like, I'm going to try to explain this. Before it was, okay, I'm trying to remind myself that I like myself. So the shame experience felt like it was the predominant experience. And then there was this like teeny tiny part of me that was like, but remember you like yourself. Remember you like yourself. Remember you like yourself. Try to like yourself.
Yeah.
And this time it was like, no, the shame showed up. And the part of me that was like, I like myself, was like, hey, I see you. I see that you're here. I like, you're bringing up some really big feelings and some really big emotions that need to get released. Like, yes, please do that. And also, like, you're not the biggest person in the room anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, my husband was like, that was kind of cool to watch, because like, you fully felt that. Like, you cried harder than I've seen you cry in a very long time, but you didn't direct it to anyone, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you were done, you were done.
Yeah. And that, I think, at the core of everything is like the most important thing. You really do have to love yourself. Like, you have to get to know yourself and be your own friend. Like, before I went into the hospital, I always said that I had a logic voice and a negative voice in my brain,
Mm-hmm.
and they were always combating against each other. There was never like any positive, or anything. It was just making sense of things or talking down to myself and just beating myself up all the time.
Yeah.
And then once I got into the hospital, that was when like this random little positive voice in the back of my head came, and it was like, hey, you're going to be okay. Just like very nurturing. It, like, I will just picture my brain tucked in and like a little hand just like caressing it, like, it'll be okay, like just very like motherly and stuff. And that is something like I've really tried to continue building up, to where like these other ones, they're not the like the dominant force in my brain anymore. It's kind of like this positive one. And then logic's good, but we're going to try to get rid of the negative one.
Right.
And like, it's just, it was wild because I'm like, I've never heard this voice before.
Right. Right. When you like, when that positive voice comes in and it's like,
Yeah, I'm like,
oh, we don't talk to ourselves like that. And I'm like,
yeah,
hi, hello, my name's Lee. It's so nice to meet you.
yeah. Like, where have you been all my life?
Right. Right. Like, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Yes.
You you just brought something out that I think is so crucial for people who are struggling and for people who've like really experienced what it's like to consider removing yourself from the situation in whatever way.
Mhm.
And it's that you just said when that negative part pops up, right? And I think it kind of goes with what I said of like I'm processing a little here.
Yep.
You have to meet that deep, dark, scary, twisty, fucked up part
Yeah.
with attunement.
Mhm.
You have to be like, hey, oh yeah, like, oh yeah, you feel really bad, don't you? Like, you're really hating on yourself. Like, you're really judging. Like, you're in a lot of pain. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm listening. Like, let me understand you
Yeah.
rather than try to force you away
Yeah.
or drink you away or leave
Or
life,
ignore.
right? Or ignore or
Yeah.
whatever, you know, what if I just let you be here
Yeah.
and listened to you, not listen to what you're telling me to do, but listened
Right.
like underneath, like really got to understand why that's what you're telling me to do.
Yeah.
There's probably some really good wisdom. I know there's some
Yeah.
really good insight underneath of that. And I've seen it now, like I said, using that book, like
Mhm.
it's so wild to me how often our avoidance and our anger and our like people pleasing and our freezing and dissociating, there's like the realest, most raw, vulnerable emotions underneath of that.
Mm.
And if you can validate what's on top, then whatever is on top, protecting that super vulnerable piece or part goes, okay, she's safe enough to show her this.
Yeah.
And I also want to be so clear, like Traci, you've been working on this for like
Yeah.
a hot minute, right?
Hot minute.
Hot minute. I've been working on this for a hot minute. So like if you're listening to this and going, okay, well, what are the steps? Right?
Yeah.
I think the very first step is getting into a space with another human who knows how to practice attunement and validation and who
Yeah.
can model that for you. Because if you're like me and Traci and you learn by observing, if you've never watched somebody validate themselves, or if you've never watched some like a conversation in real time where someone validates someone else and they're just attuned with them and they like
Mhm.
don't take responsibility for their feelings and also support them through their feelings, then you have no idea what to do.
Yeah. And this kind of goes back to, your dirty river
Right.
analogy, where like putting myself in some of the coaching spaces that I have and just surrounding myself with a different kind of group of people, that really opens up and shows you what is possible, because like I didn't know life coaching was a thing. I didn't know trauma work was a thing, like all this stuff. And so the people you surround yourself could really make an impact on just your own well-being as you observe, as you interact, like they're showing you like, yeah, here's how I do it. Let me help you with your own. And
Mhm.
then you can take these tools and you start doing it. And one of the things like you can do on your own that's super easy is like I learned it from my mentor Cynthia Garcia, just playing the I wonder game. So when like those really big negative ones, so like I wonder why you're here. I wonder why you're saying
Yeah.
that. And just be like really open. And like some of the things are like, oh wow, I did not know I was holding on to that. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about that. So
Okay. So one is mentorship.
mhm.
And I think that this is a huge part of leadership because how do you learning how to follow someone follow the footsteps of someone who is leading themselves or leading others in a way that you would like to do, like,
Yeah.
there's no better way to learn.
Yeah. It's so valuable.
Yeah. So that's that mentorship piece, even if it's indirectly, right? Even if it's being in a space where you're just watching and they're not
Yes.
actually like directly mentoring you, that will shift. It shifts your energy. It shifts the thoughts you're going to have. There's a whole, like, if you want to go down a hyperfixation rabbit hole, go look up the mastermind principle with Napoleon Hill. Like, it's, there's a lot there. And so that's the first piece, is like, get yourself in spaces where people think like this and are leading themselves like this and are being kind to themselves like this, like where
Yeah.
their rivers are clean ish, or if, you know, they're relatively clean, and if they notice a piece of trash, they're like, oh, piece of trash, and they bend down, pick it up out of the river, throw it away, move on. They're not like, oh my gosh, how did that get in there, you know, or pretending
Or they
it's not
ask for
there.
help.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
learning to ask for help is so important.
What? Yes. So mentorship and getting into community with people who are practicing vulnerability and kindness and curiosity and compassion and attunement and all those things.
Yeah.
And we have 2 spaces right here. If either of them feel good for you,
Yeah.
you're welcome. And then the other thing that you said was, and I didn't realize it until you said it, I alluded to earlier, is starting to look at your thoughts as separate from who you are. And so what that looks like in a very real step-by-step process is, you think a thought and you notice you think a thought.
Yeah.
And instead of going, that is my thought, I created that thought, there's no other thought that I could think that's different than that thought, it is what it is. You go, that is an interesting thought.
Yep.
And you can ask yourself all sorts of questions from that point. Is that my thought? Who taught me to think like this?
Yeah.
What just happened that caused that thought to pop in my head? Where did I learn that thought? Right? Like, when's the first time I thought that thought?
Yep.
When do I normally think that thought?
Does it happen at a certain,
right.
Yeah.
Is there some
Each time I notice.
Yeah. Is there some consistency to that thought? Is it happen in a particular place with a particular person when I feel a particular way? Like, this, my friends, is called metacognition. And if you are learning about it for the first time, I'm sorry, because this, like, literally, I'm sorry, not sorry. When I learned metacognition, it literally, like, it blew my mind, literally and figuratively. My brain was like, wait, we can think about our own thinking? All my thoughts aren't my thoughts? What?
Yeah. Like,
I was in my doctoral program, by the way, when somebody taught me how to think about my own thinking. And I was like, again, this would have been really helpful in kindergarten. Thank you. So learning how to practice metacognition is another really big piece. And then the other piece is, and actually one more thing I want to add on to that piece is, one of the ways I do this with language, I'm really big on language, is when I'm talking out loud or journaling or processing through a thought, I say, the story my brain is telling me, or the thought I just had said. I don't say, I think, I feel, I believe, I know. Nope. I separate it from myself.
mm-hmm.
So the story my brain is telling me makes it a lot easier to go, okay, well, if this is how I'm interpreting the thought, could I interpret it differently? And like, I don't think I can put into words how magical that one thing is. Because our brains, I feel like when they're in that like really deep, dark place, they say they speak to us in absolutes.
Oh,
they're like, everybody hates you.
Yep.
Nobody wants you. You're worthless. Everyone would be better off without you. Anytime I hear my brain say every, any, no one, never, always, I'm like, that's that's an interesting thought.
That's a that's a good thing to notice is the absolutes, because then it's like, oh, probably not.
Right. Like there's very little chance I'm being curious if I'm saying always or never or every time or never or things like that, because those aren't curiosity words.
Mhm.
Those are absolutes.
Yeah.
Is there
It's
any
like,
Oh,
oh,
please.
well, it's like yesterday, when I was telling my therapist, like I can't save everyone. And so I can't make a difference. Like that's where my brain went. Like I can't save everyone. I can't make a difference. And she's like, well, it's true. You can't save everyone, but it is true that you can make a difference. And she's like, it just even has to be one person. And I'm like, okay.
I love
Okay.
that. I love she said it's true, but it's true.
I
Like,
know, because like I'm like, oh, that hurts. And it is true.
okay, so that actually takes me to one of my other favorite practicalities around this is practicing the both and,
Mhm.
right? So not making myself choose between my thoughts. So a lot of times my brain will like give me dilemmas and when I'm in a really like depressed state. And I don't say that lightly. Like y'all, I've been on antidepressants off and on, currently on since I think the age of 12, 14. So like uh, depression and anxiety and I have had a
Oh yeah.
really long relationship. And when I notice that I'm in a depressed state, sometimes I'll just catch my thoughts and it'll be my brain's like trying to pick between a dilemma. It's like, well, do the thing that makes this person happy or do the thing that makes you happy. And it's like, that's an either or.
Yeah.
And neither of those feels good. And so I'll examine those thoughts and go like, okay, well, what's the third option? Right?
Mhm.
And I'll ask that as a question. If there was another option, right? What else could we choose? And it's something about that, not there is a third option. It's
Mhm.
if there was. Let's play a game.
Yeah.
Maybe if there was, right? Can is it possible for there to be an answer where my needs are met and this person's needs are met? Is it possible for me to feel really sad and really despondent and quite hopeless and also go, and I know I'm probably not going to feel like this in an hour or a day or a week. So like, yeah, I feel this way now. It's awful. I hate it.
Mm.
And it could change.
Yeah.
And there was something about that, like not making myself go to the toxic positivity of it's going to change. It will be different. There will be a day I never feel these things again. Yeah, no. Like my brain's like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
The two things are true, both and has just been so helpful for me. And it's been helpful for a lot of my clients that like get stuck
Yeah. Mhm.
where they're like, well, I either take myself out or I'm miserable. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Or what if there was a third option? What could
Yeah.
that be?
Because since having gotten out of the hospital, it's like it's not, you don't just suddenly get better. You are not just suddenly healed. Like it is an everyday sort of battle where you have to
Yeah.
choose, like, am I going to choose life today? Yeah. Because there have been days where something has been like so triggering where I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's act on it. Or do I need to go into the hospital again? Like it's like 1 to 100 very fast. And now that I have, multiple tools in my toolbox, I might forget like a lot of them, but
Yeah.
at most I can usually remember one.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, let's just sit for a second, just pause.
Yeah.
What are we really feeling, like where is this coming from? And then it's like I can work through that of like, okay, why are we feeling this strongly? And then just kind of work through it. And also remind myself like, you don't really want to go back to the hospital. What are you really needing, you
Mm.
know? So,
Ooh, what do I really need? Yeah. Like what's underneath of this?
yeah.
Yeah, which is it's a scary question. I get if some people might be like, that's not what I'm gonna try. That's fine. Like that might be one you try with somebody.
Mhm.
And that was one more practicality on like the to-do steps of if you're having those thoughts a good amount of the time, like have a what I like to refer to in the business space as a burn it all down human. Now,
Mhm.
we joke in our business space that like if you get to the point that you feel like you want to burn down your business and be like, I'm done, I'm out, like give it 48 hours, right? And have a human that you contact and you go, start the clock, right? Like I am ready to burn it down. They're like, great, cool. I'm going to check in with you tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to check in with you in 48 hours. If you're still feeling it that if you are absolutely sure at this point, like we'll have a conversation. That's when you go to the hospital. That's when you go like we tap in bigger resources. If you're like 75% sure, we restart the clock.
Mhm.
If you're like, no, like there's still a part of me that's like not ready to do it. Great. Restart the clock. Restart the clock. And I'm here. If you all of a sudden get to 100, like I'm here, call me. We do the thing. Now, I do that in business, not the same. I don't want to pretend that those two are the same things. There's a
Mhm.
difference between ending your business and ending your life. And having a human that you can call and be like, my brain is having these thoughts and they're not gonna freaking freak out.
Yeah.
They're not gonna freak out. The same human that you can call and you're not saying, hey, save me from this. You're saying, hey, I'm calling you because I want to save myself.
Mhm.
And I just need somebody to know. I need a little bit of a hype up. I need a little bit of
Yeah.
a you got it, right?
Mhm.
What I find when I do that with clients, whether it's ending their relationships that they really do want to stay in, ending their
Mhm.
businesses, ending anything, like I don't know, the 10th, 12th, 14th, 18th time they do it, they're like, this is kind of getting old. They're like, I never actually get to the point I really want to. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So like notice that that is your action step. Your plan is to call me, not to hurt yourself.
Mhm.
Your plan is to do this thing that shows people that you're struggling so that you can get support.
Mhm.
And if anyone's listening to that going, that's bullshit, nobody like that exists. Huh. Have you talked to Traci?
Yeah. Like, I
Like,
get it. Yeah.
I mean, that's you work with humans that you're not a therapist. I want to be really clear too. Like
Yep. Not therapist.
you're not a therapist, you're a coach. And this idea that like, by the way, y'all, if you call your therapist and you're like, I'm 48 hours away, do you know what you want to know what they're gonna do? They're gonna send you to the hospital.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, like, again, everybody gets to have understand their own patterns and
Yeah.
their own things around this. Like you get to have support in all the ups and downs of the journey by people who get it and who aren't going to freak out.
Yeah. And I feel like the more people just talk about it so openly, the less of a freak out it's going to be. Like, you know, it's not
Yeah.
something to be afraid of or just any sort of stigma. Like, it's just like, let's have a conversation. How can we
Yeah.
support you?
Yeah.
It's like if you broke your leg, like, how can I help you?
Again, your physical body is the same and that's
Yeah.
something else too is do you know how many patients I had that they would be like despondent, like unresponsive and we're like, when is the last time that this person's eyeballs have seen the sun? Like they're in a bed facing away from the window and they've been here for 6 weeks. Like what if we wheeled them on the balcony for like, I don't know, 10 minutes and got some fresh air? Like
Yeah.
what if they got to visit their kids because their kids haven't been allowed to be on the floor because they're under 12? Like we used to have a 12 and over
Mhm.
unit. What if we actually like, I don't know, this person got to listen to something that made them laugh. Like, does this person have enough nutrients? Right? Are they drinking a lot of alcohol and so their body's not absorbing nutrients? And
Yeah.
so like they don't have the necessary things to literally make cells and food for their brain to be able to think properly. There's so much more that goes into this: relational,
Yeah.
spiritual, you know, physical,
Mhm.
nutritional. There's so much more that goes into this. And this idea that it's like, oh, well, this is a purely mental thing. You are a whole human.
Mhm.
And this idea that we're going to like treat your brain separately from the rest of you is ridiculous. Especially, did you know this? That 50% of your neurotransmitters are not made in your brain.
Whoa, no, I did not.
Actually, I might
Wow.
have I might have that percentage wrong. I think it's actually higher than that. Your
Wow.
gut makes like a significant amount. The enzymes in your gut make a significant amount of your neurotransmitters. Most of your serotonin is produced in your gut, and yet we're prescribing people selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs,
Oh my God.
to fix their brain. And I'm like, yeah, your gut is part of your brain.
I got a gut
Part of your
problem.
I can't tell you how many patients we'd have come in who would have like really nasty gut infections and then they get depressed. And I'm like, "Huh, that's so fascinating. Your gut stopped working and you have less serotonin in your system."
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Wow.
So there's we won't get into it on this episode. And that's another rabbit hole for y'all to just travel down if you want. Sometimes this is really physical.
Mhm.
Sometimes this is there's so many other things that could be going on. It could be trauma, it could be nervous system regulation, it could be mental, it could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
The one thing it's not is immoral.
Mhm.
So, is there anything else that you'd like actually, can you tell our audience about the specific like coaching work that you do with people, and then we'll make sure that we have information on how they can contact you in the notes. I would love to end on that.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a certified life coach through the Modern Life Coach School, and I kind of decided on a reinvention and trauma coach as
Yeah.
kind of like my title because it's really taking from my own journey and using what has really just helped me transform and hoping to do the same with others. And so I have a program. It's called the um, identity-based coaching system that is given through the modern, and it's basically the thing that I went through. It's like really defining, what do you want out of life, what do you don't want out of life, what does your future self look like, because your future self is going to pull you rather than your past, bringing you back.
Mm,
And it's really just getting clear about you and learning about the stories you tell yourself. How do you create a new identity from that? um just like it's all encompassing, and like I can be a testament to it absolutely working because that's what I went through. And then I can also just do like general coaching of, if you've got an issue you want to work through, or if you have a specific goal, we can do some goal setting. um but yeah, I'm kind of just at the my niche, I guess you could say,
yeah.
is like those people who are just kind of like, who am I? I'm not enough. Like, what do I want to do? Like, where am I? Sort of thing. Like all these
Yeah.
questions. It's like, let's just get really clear on where you want to go, who you want to be, sort of thing. And then with the Semicolon Society on Facebook, really just wanted to grow that and be a support there, as well as do some group coaching sessions there is
Yeah.
my ultimate goal. And yeah, so that's about me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you can go on Facebook, join the Semicolon Society. It's a private group.
Yep.
People can't see you're in there, I don't believe. They
Correct. Yep.
yeah.
It's all private, and it's specifically for people who have nearly attempted and survived, or who have been hospitalized. So it is kind of like a very niche group.
Yeah.
if you are someone who has lost someone to suicide, I can like, I always recommend they go to the afsp.org website. There's
Okay.
plenty of resources there. I think it's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention,
Awesome.
is what it is. And so yeah, I can try and direct you if you've lost someone to suicide. But yeah, this group is for particular group of people.
Yeah. I'm so I'm just so grateful. I remember actually when you made the group and I was like, I wanted, and I was like, oh, I can't join. Okay. Well, and I was like, that's it's not a bad thing that I can't join. And like, I think that it just speaks to how, like, I guess exciting. And I know that seems like a weird word. And if you have ever had a like marginalized identity that people don't really talk about or that you've never really found on the internet, and then you see a group and you're like, oh, they get me, like
Yeah.
that's exciting. It's exciting. And so I love that you're doing that. I think it's a phenomenal idea. And from a coaching perspective, really like this forward facing identity based, like who do I want to be, which I think is so necessary.
Yeah.
You know, you think about the semicolon, like so much of your story is defined by the before, and like how can we shift from that and use it in informing the after?
Yeah.
And that is awesome and such a great place to focus. So like I said, I love that you're doing this work. And um you're also going to be going even deeper into your trauma
I am.
learning, not into your trauma. Well, yes, but
Well, yeah, I probably will.
into your trauma expertise. Like you're doing some of our big deep programming.
Yeah, very
And
excited.
yeah, so like I just know already how much you know and how much you help people. I'm stoked for like anyone who comes into your orbit and starts working with you over the next little bit, because I feel like it's going to get even more impactful, and you're going to be able to go even deeper with people. So
Yeah.
yeah, get in now, y'all. We're going to waitlist her therapist. We're going to waitlist
Yeah.
Traci. Everyone's going to be waitlisted. So no pressure, and like reach
Yeah.
out. Okay, so for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, this conversation was incredible and I'd love to share it with a friend, but like I don't know if they're going to listen to them talk for almost 2 hours. So reminder that we have the 10-minute podcast edition of this, where, you know, Traci and I, after we hop off here, we go pick out our favorite parts from this, and then we do a quick 10-minute episode where we chat through those, and then we're going to actually timestamp the parts in this show so that you can go back and catch those parts. So if there's a particular part you enjoyed and you're like, oh, like again, my person's not going to do this for 2 hours. I'm a 2-hour person. Some people are 10-minute people. That's why we set it up this way. You can send them to the 10-minute episode, have them check it out, and then they can pop into whichever part is their favorite. So Traci, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see you all next episode. Bye.